Alrighty, so thanks everybody for tuning into this episode of Greater Than 0%. Today we have Diana Canant, who's the founder and CEO of LifeSpheres. Diana, thank you so much for your time today.
Good morning, Joseph. You're welcome. Thanks for the
Yes,
opportunity.
thank you. So per usual, we always get started with just a quick elevator pitch, you could say, of the mission of the organizations we're interviewing. So what is the mission of LifeSpheres?
So, the mission of LifeSpheres is to build resilience that empowers people to thrive by resolving trauma in peer communities globally. So, there's a bit to unpack there. But, more sort of simply put, and very broadly, our very ambitious mission is actually to turn the tide of trauma in the world.
Trauma is a topic that I think is very important to talk about, and I'm excited to talk about it with you, an expert in the field, because we're all learning. But before we do, why you? Why is this your current calling and what you're putting your passions and time towards?
Gosh, sometimes I ask that very same question of myself. Lord, why me?
Yeah, it's a good question to ask every now and then,
Yeah,
just as a little gut check.
so, well, why not me? But, I've sort of concluded that the way this all came together, there seemed to be this unique sort of pathway. Well, we're all unique, right? I mean, all of us have these unique set of variables that we arrive in a certain place. And there I arrived and had the inspiration for this. And I seemed, when I did that, it's fondly referred to as Diana's mad idea, I seemed to pull from so many things that had happened in my life. And so it became this sort of unique curation of the things that spoke to me and that I thought were powerful and that I felt strongly just might make a difference. And it turns out that they have.
Yeah. Wow. Well, yeah, thank you for that. So, the organization's history. Talk back to the founding, to the first activities that you're doing. What were some of the projects or time that you're investing, programming that we're doing in the original inception of LifeSpheres?
Yeah, which was actually before the word LifeSpheres was connected to it. It was this idea that, and interestingly, as an aside, with not much detail at all, out of adversity quite often comes gifts. And so there was some stuff going on towards the end of 2012, beginning of 2013. And out of that was born this idea that this was something that I could do. And it was very much based on the observations that I'd made during the work that I had been doing. I had been practicing and then teaching an approach to the resolution of trauma called traumatic incident reduction. And I had been doing that here in the United States. And because of my connection to South Africa, I am South African. I traveled there and did a lot of teaching of TIR in South Africa. And so one thing leads to another, and I recognized that I could put together a community program that would leverage the power of that very effective approach, but put it into the hands of people at the grassroots level. TIR is one of many. I mean, I, of course, happen to think it's really good and powerful and have observed it to be that way. But there are a variety of things that therapists of various stripes learn to do, social workers, psychologists, even some psychiatrists. And that's who I was teaching. Except that because of the nature of TIR, it's actually an educational model. We could teach it to anyone. It was all welcome. And I was going into communities, and I was particularly inspired by a few things that happened in South Africa, where sort of by contrast, I had just done the TIR workshop with a gentleman who was maybe still is, I'm not sure. He was the psychologist to the astronauts at NASA. And I'd been training some, people with all kinds of fancy letters after their names. But there I was at the, at the same time, being given the opportunity to do the very same training with people who'd possibly not even finished high school. I was engaged by an organization called Love Life. And it was very powerful to see what they could do together when given these tools. And that sort of was my inspiration when the adversity happened. And I was like, oh, hang on, what do I want to do with all of this? This is kind of what came together. And I honestly, not to sound a little woo-woo, but it really felt like I sort of channeled it, because I sat down and I just put it on the computer. I just created this thing. And then it sort of took off from there. Just really, just to add to that, the thing that I think became the catalyst was that, sort of, I don't know, timing is everything. And I think being purposeful is huge. This felt very purposeful to me. And lo and behold, I discovered a program called the Global Mental Health Trauma and Recovery Program, provided by Harvard Medical School as a continuing education program. And I felt strongly that I had a seat on that, having just completed this, putting it together. And I challenged all their prerequisites, and they let me in. And I discovered that it's basically run by a fabulous gentleman by the name of Dr. Richard Malika, whose purpose in doing so is to bring together a global network of professionals addressing the problem of the 1 billion people affected by trauma, violence, and what have you. So I was very inspired by his book called Healing Invisible Wounds, Paths to Hope and Recovery in a Violent World, and then got myself, in his presence at his course and connected with these incredible people. And I then sort of massaged my program and made the connections. And that was all And in 2015, we launched. We did the very first program actually in South Africa. So
wow.
That's how it all started.
Wow. I've written down so many questions, but I feel like one of the obvious ones we should start with is the title, LifeSpheres. There has to be some story behind that. So why LifeSpheres? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you for asking me that, because I happen to really love that name. We first started out as just me running around like a chicken with my head cut off. And then we did start a nonprofit in 2016 because we clearly needed to do that. And it had a different name. It was called Artacare Foundation. But we needed to restructure. And in 2020, we actually set ourselves up as a California 501c3 public charity. And I chose this name, LifeSpheres. And you're always like, oh, is this a good name? And as the years have gone by, it's just so the right name.
Yep.
So the LifeSpheres are symbolic of the choices that we make within our own lives to do that which is conducive to the well-being of all of the spheres of our lives. And it starts with us in the middle, and making the choices to do the right thing for our own well-being. And then it goes out from there, these sort of interconnected spheres of life, which when we make the right choices, meaning the choices that are conducive to well-being, we do well. But of course, if we don't make the right choices, our life spheres can be a bit of a mess. But the whole idea is to make ethical choices for the well-being of these spheres that go outwards, intimate connections, and then groups, all the many groups we might belong to, and then that big group called humanity, and then the bigger group, which is all living things, and it sort of gets really big. And we need to look after all those things, and that's what LifeSpheres is symbolic.
Last question I have on that topic before we change it is, and this is always a debate I've not a debate, but just a back and forth I've heard in religion and philosophy, is starting with that center life self sphere versus starting with the other's sphere. Why, in your opinion, is it more important to start with your own sphere, your own self, before moving to other spheres? Because I feel like people that are caregivers, for example, or have to watch their family, a lot of times are sacrificing their potentially their life sphere time, depending on how they define that. But maybe it's more like self-care, which is probably might not be a part of that self-life sphere that you're talking about. But maybe just that idea in general. I don't know if you ever come across it in your work, but it's always a challenge to answer that.
Yeah, no, there's a lot to be said about that. That's a great question. So, it is within our bodies that we reside, and we're no use to anyone else if we aren't taking care of, who we are and how we're doing and the things that we need to be able to show up in a way in which we can also make the choice to help others. And then, there's a sort of a way sometimes that I visualize these spheres, that kind of like the drop in the water, where it starts this, what is that called? So it makes the ripples that
Like the
goes
big wave, like the initial
concentric
wave. Yeah,
circles, yeah,
yeah.
of
Oh, yeah,
ripples,
yep,
right?
yep.
And that they echo back. Those ripples will ripple out and ripple back. And sometimes I almost then sort of it morphs into a donut, where if we go outward of these spheres, the outermost sphere is infinity, or God as we see God, or, the infinite, the universe. And our contemplation of the most, of us being in communion with and contemplating the well-being of that connection. And that, in fact, and I'm just now speaking personally because I think this is
Hmm.
all like our personal choices, it seems to come back to the middle at that point where, if we call it God or the universe or however we want to hold this, it comes back to the middle as that in us, as that in our family, as that in the groups that we belong to, that we can see that sort of in all things. But it seems that in order for us to be stable, we really actually need to be able to hold all, but that's a really tall order. We have the best bet is to start, within, get that strong so that then we can tend to others. And I just want to say one more thing about what you said.
Yeah.
Look, those can become imbalanced. And we have people that will be kind of stuck or very like overly involved in one of those other spheres to the detriment of the others,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's actually quite important for us to be able to keep a balance of those life spheres and
Yeah.
make choices in which they can work together, in a nice resonant way.
All right. Well, thank you for going on that aside with me. All right. So trauma, it's in your mission statement. It's core to what you guys are working to resolve. How does LifeSpheres define trauma? Obviously, it sounds like it's a pretty broad definition if 1 billion people are impacted by it. So I'd love to hear LifeSpheres' definition of trauma, because I feel like in this day and age, sometimes the word trauma is used in much lighter explanations of things than maybe the your definition.
Right, right. Or it gets a little too specific where it then
Mm,
leaves out,
right.
because here's the thing. Here's how we define it. For starters, it's extremely subjective. And as I speak, this will also speak of our probably most core principle on which we operate, which is person-centeredness, the recognition that people are the experts and authority of their own experience. And they're the ones that can tap into their own wisdom and figure things out and come to their own conclusions about their own lives. So that when it comes to what is trauma, its broad definition would be an overwhelming event. Now, what overwhelms me
Hmm.
might not be overwhelming to you at all, and what overwhelms you, I might, think is just nothing. It's so, so,
Yeah.
so subjective. And so we have to ask the person, and we have to let them determine what has overwhelmed them, what they could not cope with, what then also, because the other thing that's really important, and this has been big, like light bulb moments for me, it's because it's not for us to determine what somebody's trauma is. It's theirs. We must be careful not to, because we say, oh, you experienced some trauma, we need to fix you. But, we might not have to do that at all. The person, maybe they've gotten over it. Maybe they did some work on that. Maybe it wasn't that big a deal when it happened. It's
Hmm.
really not for us to judge. So it's not trauma per se. It's the trauma that didn't resolve itself or didn't resolve in some way, shape, or form. So it's the trauma that I sort of refer to as sticky trauma, the trauma that
Hmm.
is stuck, that we carry with us, that is certainly because it's trauma, it overwhelmed us at the time it happened, but it
Yep.
continues to overwhelm us to some degree, whatever that is.
Yeah. Yeah. What and you said in people doing the self reflection on if it's something that they cannot cope with, likely they're still experiencing trauma. What are some typical obvious and not obvious signs that you've seen of measurable somebody not being able to cope with something? Is it like increased anxiety? Is it outbursts in anger? I'd love to hear some of the common ones and maybe some of the uncommon ones for people that are listening and want to do their own self-reflection.
Well, sure. How we know is we ask them because it's for them to
um,
say, right?
mm,
And so the answer to each one of those examples you cited is yes, yes, and yes, whatever it is for that person.
okay.
And so we don't come as experts and authorities to judge
Mm,
how something has affected someone, whether it's affected them. We are a non medical, non pathologizing, non diagnostic, non stigmatizing, non religious program.
yep.
One of our board members who has been with us actually from the beginning said, Diane, you're going to have to put in a little not non in there. So, okay, it's a person centered, highly accessible program that doesn't make any judgments about people. We simply put into their hands the knowledge that
Yep.
they are wonderful, that they are perfect, that it's not about there being anything wrong with them, that it's all about what has happened. And this is very much sort of part of the trauma informed approach. Is it's not what happened to you. It's not what's wrong with you. It is what happened to you. And so, sorry, I lost my train of thought there for a
Yeah,
second.
no. I think you answered the question anyways. That was the main.
About it being, okay. Uh, and so we basically step them through a voyage of discovery
Mm,
in which they come to know and make the choice what's affected them and how. And we're asking them what it is that they experience. And, we can certainly name, and we're aware of, there are things that are, the outcomes of trauma. And I
mm,
do actually have a little bit more to say about what are the outcomes of trauma.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, wow. So we explained what. Now, how you guys help resolve trauma in peer communities globally, help people put trauma behind them. How do people put trauma behind them? What are some of the
Right.
mechanisms and programs that you have
Yes.
that help people get to that point?
Okay, very good. Thank you for asking me that question. So, I would like to say something else about
Yeah.
what, in fact, objectively are the outcomes of trauma.
Yeah.
And we make this really bold claim, which to me, when you think about it, is really not that bold, because if we've understood that impact to the psychobiology is, and the fact that we speak of this word that is about triggering, things get triggered. And if that's all correct, and I think it's very robust, and I think it's quite correct, then Joseph, pretty much every sort of societal ill has as its foundation unresolved trauma,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? So if you're seeing dysfunction, if you're seeing suffering, if you're seeing people behave, feel, do, well, actually, we fondly call them beeps. So if you see people demonstrating unwanted and unaccounted for, and perhaps let's say inappropriate behaviors, emotions, attitudes, pains, and sensations, the sort of constellation of their suffering. It's hard to think of what the exceptions to that would be.
Yeah.
That really is born of experience that hasn't resolved itself. And it shows up in our lives, and we're going, what the heck's going on? So that's what it is, and there it is. And so what we do about it, the how, is a program called the PeerCommunity CoCare Program. And we kind of need to unpack this word peer because it's in our mission, in peer communities globally. What do we mean by that? Well, to me, when Diana had her mad idea, was this recognition that when you put people together who have had the same or similar experiences, they hear and understand each other in a way that is very hard for experts to beat. That it's about being really seen, heard, and understood, and allowed to explore and hear yourself say out loud these things you need to hear yourself say, so as to come to understand your very own self better. That's what needs to happen. with someone who you really know is getting it. So this peer community thing is important. So we seek out groups of people who are sort of identified, you might say, in a way that they have similar life experience, lived experiences in common, right? We gather those together. We teach them some things about trauma, which in psychology is referred to normalizing trauma. We want them to know, you're not broken. You don't have a hole in
Hmm.
your soul. But stuff has happened. And so, this is a normal response. And so we go over that. With that out of the way, we now teach them this powerful set of tools. I call it the triangle of success. There are sort of these three active ingredients of being impactful. One of them is the communication skills. Essentially, we call them session engagement skills, the way in which they need to engage with each other that provides profound safety. And so we teach them those skills, the session engagement exercise skills. And then on the other corner of this triangle of success is a set of rules that we ask them to follow, rules of non-intrusion, rules of sort of respect for each other's time, rules that really make sort of honor those skills that they just learned and go hand in hand. And then at the bottom of that triangle, where it sort of comes together at the bottom, is a structure which is very, very predictable, which they must follow. Remembering we take this to lay communities and we can't hold this in any sort of loose and careless way.
Hmm.
So it's a highly structured program. So they, with this wonderful program facilitator, she's all full of fabulous learning. What are they called? Mnemonics, mnemonic, whatever, those
Yeah,
things where you
yeah.
teach people, you help them to remember. And it's all for us.
Hmm.
So apply the skills, follow the rules, and use the structure. And with those three things on that triangle, having learned them and practicing what they need to practice, we then put them in session with each other. So we don't do this as no group thing. People know that Diana is going to break out in hives if it starts to look like group therapy. So we don't want anybody, no group therapy
Yep,
pictures,
yep.
just learning this fabulous stuff. They choose who they would like to work with. We're there every step of the way. We guide them through an individual plan. They do their work together on their stuff,
Hmm.
following, as I say, applying the skills, following the rules, and using the structure. And until they've addressed all the things that are up for them, their life experiences, the things that stress them out, the issues that bother them, et cetera, et cetera. So you can hear this is a very comprehensive program. This is not some
Yeah.
thing, right? We charge no money for this, but this is definitely not something for nothing. We don't want their money. What we want is their commitment. We
Hmm.
want them, first of all, to want to, you know, have a better life and feel better and engage in a way that they know they can. But we want them to want that for others as well and for each
Yeah.
other, and to commit to that. So we ask them actually to sign a commitment that they're going to come, learn what we're going to teach them, and then do this work together, show up, and sort of stick it out all the way through. And honestly, Joseph, it is absolutely life transforming. That is our one and only program that I had this mad idea about back in early 2013. We do now have some other programs, which I can touch on if you would like me to tell you about them. They're basically so we can raise funds for this program. But that is what it is that we do, this life transforming work.
Yeah. I'd love to hear stories and data, right? So this was an original idea back in 2013. It's been almost a little over a decade since then. So I'm sure there's been some really amazing, I know it's crazy, amazing stories over the past 10, 11 years of people that have gone through the programming and what the outcome has been. I'd love to hear if you have any offhand or any other metrics that you'd like to share the impact and go
Yeah.
from there.
Yeah, well, let's just talk a little bit clinically first, and then do I have stories? I have so many. I'll just grab some out of my hat in a minute. But I do want to first say that when I did, sort of sat down and put this together, I felt strongly that we needed to do this right and that we needed to, we just really don't need another cult in the world, and we just don't need a lot of claims. I really, really wanted to keep my feet on the ground and research this. I mean, in fact, it used to be called a demonstration program because every step of the way we feel the need to demonstrate the outcomes, and to sort of have this be evidence-based. TIR itself is evidence-based, but not, this adaptation needed to stay humble and arrive at a proof of concept. Well, after all these years, we have way more than a proof of concept. We have something that is shown to work because of all the data we've been collecting. So we pre-test, and long story short, less was more. We sort of arrived at the big three, which is anxiety, depression, and PTSD. So PTSD, depression, and anxiety are the three that we're saying, well, if we can show, clinical, what's called statistical significant change on those three, that would be great. And we have,
Right.
and we are, and we continue to. So there's that, which sort of, hard data, quantitative research is showing fantastic results. Our qualitative research is the feedback that we get on an evaluation form. And then, of course, there's all those stories, those. We can be dismissive and say, oh, well, those are just anecdotes. But I loved whoever it was that said the plural of anecdote is evidence.
That's a good one.
So yeah, we have so many stories, I mean, I'll tell you just a couple of them because they came at such an odd time. This is hard. It's hard work.
Yeah.
This is no easy thing. There's so much work to be done, and it's sort of, it's kind of serious. And there have been, honestly, times where 3 a.m. crazies, I'm like, done.
God.
And it's weird. It'll be those times where I'll remember one time, it was just before Christmas. I think this was like that very next morning, I wake up and, okay, on we go. And I get a text message from Monica in South Africa. And so much of the work that we've done has been in these, seriously underserved, which is such a euphemism, communities, abjectly poor. She comes from one of those communities. We're very proud of that. I just want to say, though, before I just go on and tell you a little more about Monica and how she got me back on board that morning, is that trauma doesn't discriminate. So we don't exist to simply, say, well, we're going to go find the underserved and the poor and all that. We've served them by far more than anyone else. And it's so fantastic to be able to provide access in that way. But, I would have to say equally willing to show up anywhere, anytime, even for the well-heeled of San Francisco. And we have. And they benefit, and we benefit too. When we sort of provide for the haves. Sure, some of our funders are, well, please don't spend my money on the guys that have the money. It's fine, we won't, We often find funders amongst the well-heeled that come and do our program. So
yeah.
Anyway, Monica comes from one of those places where they live in shacks. These are one of them described their community recently as their little shanty town. They really are. In South Africa, they're called informal settlements. There's a euphemism for you.
Mm.
Anyway, Monica texted me that morning, and she said, "Diana, you gave me the best Christmas present ever." Now, she had already done the program, and it completely transformed her life, and she'll tell stories about that. She wanted so much, and this is exactly how we see that it should go. Because of the benefit that she received in the program that she participated in, she said, I want this for my community. So fine, we have a training for that. So that's the program facilitator training. So she became trained and she started implementing the programs. This is our beneficial side effect, by the way, which I didn't even realize until a few years in, that people are actually being able to get a means to an income, not making shoes and trinkets for people who've got money. I mean, fine, I'm not saying don't do that, whatever. I'm saying, what if we actually teach them how to do incredible work uplifting their own community and pay for them for that? Because that's our biggest expense. We need funding to pay our people to do this work. And we can pay the people in those communities. It's absolutely fabulous. Anyway, she started doing that. And she said, Diana, you've given me the best Christmas present ever. You gave me my daughter back. Because her daughter just now,
Mm,
she was a huge thing about family, and now her daughter
jeez.
just finished a program, and she got her daughter back.
Wow. Well, it's got goosebumps. Oh. Um, so that uplifted you that morning, it sounds like a little bit.
Oh, certainly. Oh, okay, I won't quit today. Not today
Yeah.
anyway. On we go.
Wow.
And of course, there's
Yeah.
absolutely no option. You just can't. I see this as a legacy project.
Yep.
We've got a long way to go. I appreciate whoever it was who said that if you're trying to do something that you can accomplish in your lifetime, you're thinking too small. I'm not thinking too small. It's a huge job. But if I can get this ball rolling and get it to be rolling on its own, which I don't think we're there yet, even after all these years, it's not going to roll on its own. If I keel over, I think the whole thing will keel over. So we really, really, really need to create an organization that is sustainable.
Yep. Well, um, good transition. Future plans
Oh,
in
right.
the next decade. What is the path to that sustainability that you're looking for, or what are some events upcoming that we want to mention, and then we'll shift over to the engagement part of the conversation.
Okay. That's a really good thought. 10 years.
Yeah.
What about in the next decade? I mean, it's just flabbergasts me that it's been a decade. But yeah, in the next decade. I'm going to get it 10 years older is one thing that's going to happen. Um, so we better get on with the job, actually. Real quick, I want to add
Yeah.
something to the last thing that I said, because talking about Monica and her daughter
Mm,
and what have you reminded me that there's a really nice little thing about the program is we know that PeerCommunity CoCare Program is a bit of a boring name. It's a good name. It's what it is. But, we did the PeerCommunity. It used to be an acronym. Oh, who needs another acronym? So, in fact, every time we do a program, we ask the group to name their program. We want them to take ownership of it.
yeah.
And we'd like them to name it, and without the word trauma in there. We don't like that word trauma. Let's have them call it something that feels hopeful, that is
Mm,
their vision of what they want for themselves and their community. And so we have like 57 different names for these things, and they're wonderful names. And Monica's daughter, she was in, I think they might have called themselves the Gifts of Survival. And we have the Caravan of Healing, we have the Light in the Darkness, just these endless number of amazing names. They're on our website. There's a page called Community Program Names or something, and they make their own logo and wonderful names, just wonderful names.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
Wow.
and so the future. So Joseph, I'm very grateful to you for giving me this opportunity to get maybe a few ears and eyeballs and to hear about this and to raise a bit of awareness about it. While I will not turn a single person down, I'm not speaking to you because we're looking for people to participate in our program. As you can imagine, when we tell people about this, there's lots of people who would like to participate in our program.
Right. A billion people. It sounds like almost.
Exactly. So, as soon as we have a group that is like saying, yeah, we want to do this, we have a problem. And that is sufficient funds to implement that program,
Yep.
right? Because it costs us money to pay for the printing, sometimes a venue, maybe some catering. And in the end, as I said previously, our biggest expense is paying our people. I was never interested in running a volunteer organization. If people want to volunteer, we would love them to engage with us. Please, if you're able to volunteer, we will gratefully take your time and put you to use in the most amazing way. Absolutely. But we feel like a fair exchange for great work is the way for us to move this into the world. And so we need to generate a revenue stream. And we would love for people, if they can, to contribute their money energy. That's all money is. It's a form of energy, and it'll give us huge energy to move forward and to do more programs, to offer people who say, I want your program, I need your program, we need your program. I could really, this is going to help my community. Great. We would love to say we got enough money in the bank right now, we can do that, and we can put this growing team, because then the next thing they really, really want is to learn how to do this when they can. And of course, often this is also their interest is in solving the problem of employment, because in poor communities, that is a challenge. So that if we can offer them this work and know that they can do this wonderfully purposeful work, we need to be able to pay them. So
Right.
we would love engagement in the way of financial support. And then our other strategy for our organization is partnerships. We'd love, 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 love. In fact, I mean, I would almost put that, I can't say, yeah, that we can push the monies down the importance scale. It's probably the number one. And, no money, no mission. You absolutely have to have the funds. But partnerships are are sort of a part of that, because if we can partner with organizations who perhaps are well funded and are doing work, and our program would benefit their beneficiaries. In other words, if our mission is compatible and resonant with their mission, we can join and team up. We love that. So partnerships with organizations who see our program as having potential benefit, we will come and humbly say, let's give it a try. Let's see if it works. We don't want to come and say, oh, yeah, this is a great thing, best thing since sliced bread. But rather say, let's give it a try in your community and see how it goes. So we start with a pilot and we'll take it from there.
Yeah. Wow. This is amazing.
In 10 years, we have oodles of partnerships, a bundle of money in the bank, a huge team implementing, but an organization that is staffed to manage all that.
Right.
My God,
right.
In 10 years, if I could describe this organization in that way, I will be a happy person.
That's amazing. That's a great vision too. Let's work towards that. Let's help you achieve it.
Okay.
So people that are listening, we include all the links in the social media and the website information and the donate information, all in the details here, and we'll also share it and tag you, and all the social media outlets. In addition to that, of course, I think we've covered a ton. We've covered so much. This has been great. Is there anything that you think, at all my notes, I feel like I covered everything. Is there anything you think we need to mention before we wrap up here, or anything you want to leave us with before we wrap up this episode?
A shameless claim. Can I?
Yeah, please, all of them.
I think, personally, that this is an idea whose time has come, that I would really, really love to figure out a way to help people to hear just how important this is and how it's at the heart of absolutely everything.
Yeah.
We have one of the people on our board in South Africa who says that this program is the healing tool for the nation in South Africa, and Lord knows South Africa needs it, but what country doesn't?
Right.
So,
Yeah.
To get the word out.
I agree. 1 billion people that are going through this, that's way too many. So thank you so much for the work that you're doing. We're really honored to share the work of LifeSpheres, and people that are listening and inspired, get engaged. You have all the links that you need to do that. And Diana, thank you so much for your time as well. I really appreciate it, and we wish you the best of luck. And again, honored to share the work that you're doing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Joseph. From the bottom of my heart, I really appreciate it.
Thank you.